Captain Diana Sinclair stepped into the Solaris Galleria, a woman on a simple mission. But to the watching staff, she was a stereotype walking. Another black woman with a substantial purse, a target ripe for accusation. The security guards, Gideon and Milo, began to close their invisible net, their steps heavy with practiced authority, their eyes eager to trap their prey. And then he appeared, Officer Jax Corrigan, his presence loud, his smirk a weapon, an enforcer of fear masquerading as law. What none of them could perceive, what they were blind to, was the inferno of resolve burning behind her serene gaze, a fire forged by 2 decades of dedicated service. A captain's insignia earned not with ease, but with relentless grit. They imagined she would crumble, that she would fold quietly. They were profoundly mistaken, and in a single crystallizing moment, their unbridled arrogance was about to collide with its reckoning. Before we journey any further, feel the connection and comment from where in the world you are witnessing this, and make sure you subscribe, because tomorrow's chronicle is one you will not want to miss. The Saturday afternoon sun cascaded through the vast skylights of the Solaris Galleria, painting brilliant strokes of warmth across the gleaming, polished floors. Captain Diana Sinclair moved with a quiet purpose, the supple leather of her purse swinging in a gentle rhythm at her side. After a draining week buried under mountains of paperwork and tedious personnel meetings, the simple act of choosing a birthday gift for her niece, Mia, felt like a deep, cleansing breath of crisp, fresh air. "Something truly special for Mia," she whispered to the air, her eyes scanning the vibrant storefronts. The Galleria thrummed with the energy of weekend life, a tapestry of families navigating strollers and teenagers congregating by the grand central fountain. For a moment, Diana allowed herself to melt into the rhythm, to push the weighty thoughts of her duty aside. That fleeting sense of peace endured for precisely 8 minutes. She first saw them not directly, but as distorted figures in the polished reflection of a boutique window. 2 security guards maintaining what they undoubtedly believed was a covert distance. The taller one, his name tag identifying him as Gideon, murmured into his radio, his gaze fixed squarely upon her. His shorter partner, Milo, darted nervous glances between Diana and Gideon, a visible discomfort etched on his face. Diana's jaw tightened into a rigid line. 20 years in law enforcement had sharpened her senses. She could detect surveillance from a mile away. She had been shadowed in stores before, a familiar sting of prejudice that was nothing new, but its repetition never lessened the ache. "Copy that." Gideon's voice, sharp and clear, sliced through the ambient noise of the corridor. Black female, brown leather satchel, blue sweater. Maintaining visual. Diana's fingers instinctively curled, her nails pressing into her palms. A powerful urge surged through her, a wave of fire demanding she spin around, confront them, flash the badge that was her life's work, and watch the color drain from their faces as they squirmed under the weight of their mistake. But no. She was off duty. She was here for Mia. She would not permit them to poison this moment. Drawing a slow, steadying breath, she stepped across the threshold of Aura Gems, a boutique specializing in high-end jewelry and accessories. The air inside was thick with the sweet, cloying scent of vanilla and echoed with the smooth, mellow tones of soft jazz. Behind a glass counter stood a middle-aged white woman, her blazer impeccably crisp. "Eleanor," her name tag announced. Her body went rigid, a subtle but unmistakable shift. "May I help you?" Eleanor's tone was brittle, her smile a painted-on facade that failed to reach her cold eyes. "Just looking, thank you," Diana replied, her own voice a deliberate counterpoint of warmth and steadiness, even as her heart began a frantic drumming against her ribs. She drifted toward a display of delicate charm bracelets, the very kind Mia had been subtly hinting at for months. In the mirror behind the counter, Diana could see Eleanor's eyes tracking her every move, a silent, unblinking surveillance. Just outside the boutique's entrance, Gideon and Milo loitered, making a clumsy show of examining a mall directory. "These are all secured cases," Eleanor announced, her voice a little too loud, suddenly appearing at Diana's side. "Items can only be handled by staff." "I understand," Diana said, her focus remaining on the shimmering bracelets. "When I'm prepared to see one, I will let you know." Eleanor did not retreat. Instead, she edged closer, her gaze flickering anxiously between Diana's face and her purse. The leather bag, a luxury Diana had saved for 3 months to acquire, suddenly felt as if it were searing a brand into her side. "Actually," Diana said, her posture straightening, her decision made, "I would like a closer look at that silver bracelet. The one with the butterfly charm." Eleanor paused, a flicker of indecision crossing her face before she slowly reached for her keys. As the case clicked open, Diana noted the slight tremor in the manager's hands. The woman's anxiety was a palpable thing, a radiating wave of fear, as if she fully expected Diana to snatch the entire velvet tray and bolt. The bracelet was exquisite, its delicate links catching the light, tiny crystals sparkling like captured stars along the butterfly's wings. A genuine smile touched Diana's lips as she pictured Mia's face, the pure joy that would illuminate her eyes when she opened the gift. "I'll take it," she started to say. "Excuse me," Eleanor interrupted, her voice a sharp crack in the boutique's serene atmosphere. "I'm going to need to look inside your bag." The world seemed to stop. The soft jazz faded into nothingness. Diana could feel the heat rising in her neck, a flush of humiliation as the other shoppers in the store turned to stare, their curiosity piqued. "I beg your pardon?" Diana kept her voice low, a tightly controlled whisper of disbelief. "A piece of jewelry has gone missing from this very case." Eleanor's voice gained volume, fortified by the arrival of Gideon and Milo, who now stood flanking the entrance. "I saw you slip it into your purse." Diana's hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from a deep, seismic rage. "That is an absolute lie. I have not touched a single thing except for the bracelet you just handed me." "Ma'am, please cooperate," Gideon instructed, stepping forward, his hand resting authoritatively on his radio. "Place your bag on the counter." Diana drew herself up to her full height, the familiar, comforting weight of her authority settling over her like a well-worn coat. "I will not. I have stolen nothing, and you possess no right to search my private property without probable cause." Milo shifted on his feet behind his partner, his discomfort now radiating from him. Eleanor's face was a blotchy red, but she plunged forward. "Either you show us what is in the bag, or we are calling the police." "This is harassment," Diana stated, her voice a firm, unwavering anchor in the rising tide of chaos. "You have been following me since the moment I walked into this plaza. You are targeting me because I am a black woman, and I refuse to submit to this degradation." Gideon moved in closer, attempting to use his physical size as a tool of intimidation. "This is your final chance. Open the bag, or this gets complicated." Diana held her ground, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but her voice remained as steady as steel. "I am not opening anything. You have no right, no probable cause, and zero evidence. Back away." "That's it." Gideon grabbed his radio. "Code 10 at Aura Gems. Subject is refusing to comply. Requesting police backup." A small crowd of onlookers had now gathered at the entrance, their phones held high. Eleanor wrung her hands, looking far less certain now that the situation was spiraling out of her control. Milo kept glancing toward the exits, as if he were plotting his own escape, but Diana remained rooted to the spot. She had stared down armed suspects and faced corrupt officers. She would not be broken by mall cops and a prejudiced store manager. Her purse remained firmly at her side, her gaze locked on Gideon's. "You are making a very, very big mistake," she said, her voice a quiet storm. The tension in the air was a living thing, crackling between them as they awaited the arrival of backup, neither side willing to yield an inch. The tension inside Aura Gems grew thick enough to choke on as Diana held her ground, her composure a steel fortress even as rage threatened to surge past her defenses. "Before you proceed with these groundless accusations," she said, her voice even and directed at Eleanor, "why don't we consult your security cameras? They will confirm I have taken nothing." Eleanor's bravado flickered for just a moment. "The cameras? They are right there." Diana gestured to the conspicuous black dome mounted in the ceiling corner. "And there. And there. So let us watch the footage. Together." Gideon ignored her, choosing not to wait for Eleanor's reply. He seized Diana's right arm, his fingers digging into her flesh with bruising force. Milo, looking increasingly miserable, took her left arm with a more hesitant grip. "You were warned," Gideon growled. "Now you are interfering with a security operation." Diana's police training surged to the forefront. She could have broken their holds in a heartbeat, but that would only escalate the violence. Instead, she kept her voice unwavering and loud enough for the growing audience to hear clearly. "I am calmly requesting to view security footage that will establish my innocence. That is not interference. It is a reasonable solution." The entrance to the boutique was suddenly plunged into shadow, as a broad-shouldered silhouette pushed through the crowd of onlookers. Officer Jax Corrigan swaggered in, his badge gleaming like a trophy, his expression a mask of what looked more like eager anticipation than professional concern. Diana knew Corrigan by his tarnished reputation. The complaints against him were a regular feature on her desk. Aggressive arrests, excessive force, a clear pattern of targeting black shoppers. He had, until now, miraculously sidestepped any serious repercussions, shielded by his connections within the department. "What's the situation here?" Corrigan boomed, making a grand performance of surveying the scene. His hand rested on his holstered weapon, a deliberate and well-practiced tactic of intimidation. Eleanor rushed forward to deliver her version of events. "She won't allow us to check her bag for a stolen item." "Another one making trouble?" "Always the same story, isn't it?" Corrigan cut her off, his hostile gaze locking onto Diana. "Officer," Diana began, her tone meticulously professional, "this is a misunderstanding that can be easily resolved by—" Without a flicker of warning, Corrigan grabbed her shoulder and violently slammed her against the boutique's heavy glass wall. The impact sent a tremor through the display cases inside, and several shoppers audibly gasped. The glass was shockingly cold against her cheek as Corrigan pressed his weight against her. "Don't you tell me how to do my job," he snarled, his voice a venomous whisper close to her ear. "Hands behind your back. Now." "This is excessive force," Diana declared loudly, her voice a pillar of control despite the fire of rage and humiliation burning through her chest. "I have rights, and you are violating them." "Rights," Corrigan laughed, a harsh, ugly sound as he wrenched her arms back at a painful angle. "You've got the right to remain silent while I add resisting arrest to your list of charges." The handcuffs clicked shut, their metallic teeth biting into her wrists with unnecessary tightness. Around them the crowd had swelled. Phones were out everywhere, small rectangular eyes recording every moment. Some people whispered their disgust. Others called out that this was wrong, but not a single person intervened. Corrigan spun her around and began marching her toward the mall corridor. For Diana, each step was an exercise in controlled fury. She had dedicated her entire career to fighting against this exact brand of power abuse. And now, here she was, experiencing it from the other side. The Galleria's main corridor had ground to a halt. Shoppers were pressed against storefronts, their phones held high, capturing the spectacle of a well-dressed black woman being paraded out in handcuffs. Diana kept her head high, a beacon of defiance even as her shoulders screamed in protest from the unnatural angle of her arms. "You're making a scene over nothing," Corrigan announced to his captive audience. "Should have just cooperated." They reached one of the mall's side exits, where Corrigan's patrol car was waiting. The afternoon sun felt harsh and blinding after the mall's filtered light, and Diana had to blink several times to adjust her vision. "Before this proceeds any further," she said, her voice ringing with clarity as she turned to face the growing crowd, "I believe there is something you should know. Officer Corrigan." "Save it for the booking desk," he snapped, reaching for the car door. "I am Captain Diana Sinclair, of the 21st Precinct." Her voice carried across the parking lot with an undeniable weight of authority. "My badge is in my front left pocket, a fact you would have discovered if you had bothered to ask for my identification before assaulting me." The crowd's murmuring intensified into a wave of sound. Several people surged closer, their phones still recording. Corrigan's face, for a fleeting moment, showed a flicker of uncertainty before it hardened back into a sneer. "Sure you are," he scoffed, though a new, nervous edge had crept into his voice. And I'm the police commissioner. Check my pocket, Diana insisted. Left side. Corrigan hesitated, then roughly patted down her pocket. His hand froze as he felt the distinct familiar shape of a police badge. Slowly, carefully, he withdrew it, the gold shield catching the sunlight and flashing like a beacon. This is a fake, he declared, but the authority had vanished from his voice. Another charge, impersonating an officer. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous. She's a captain, someone shouted. He arrested a police captain for shopping. Another voice added, laced with disbelief. The phones kept recording, documenting every single second of Corrigan's rapidly crumbling composure. I suggest you remove these handcuffs, Diana said quietly. Before you dig yourself any deeper, officer. This badge could be counterfeit, Corrigan insisted, but his hands were trembling almost imperceptibly. I am taking you in for verification and adding charges. For what? Diana challenged, her voice steady despite the fury mounting within her. Shopping while black? Is that still your standard operating procedure, Officer Corrigan? More phones emerged from the crowd. Someone was now live-streaming the event. Corrigan's face had turned a mottled, ugly shade of red as the full gravity of his miscalculation began to dawn on him. But instead of de-escalating, he doubled down, grabbing Diana's arm again, attempting to force her into the patrol car. You're just making it worse for yourself, he growled through clenched teeth. Fake badge, resisting arrest, interfering with an officer. The crowd's volume swelled, their outrage a palpable force. Diana stood her ground, even in handcuffs, her voice carrying clearly above the rising chaos. Every second of this is being recorded, officer. Every abuse of power, every violation of protocol. Are you absolutely certain you wish to continue? The anger of the crowd surged like a tidal wave, their voices rising in a unified chorus of protest. Let her go, someone shouted from the back. Others immediately took up the call, and soon dozens of people were chanting, their phones held aloft like modern-day torches in the fading afternoon light. Corrigan shifted, his discomfort obvious, his grip on Diana's arm still tight but his certainty clearly gone. His usual tactics of bluster and intimidation were backfiring spectacularly as more and more mall patrons stopped to join the growing assembly. This is going viral, a teenage girl announced loudly, her eyes glued to her phone screen. It's already got 1,000 shares on TikTok. Y'all seeing this? They arrested a black police captain just for shopping. Diana remained perfectly still, her posture erect and defiant despite the painful bite of the steel handcuffs. She had navigated countless confrontations in her 20 years of service, but being on this side of the cuffs brought a raw, new perspective, one that burned like acid deep in her chest. A mall security supervisor came running out of the building, his face flushed with panic. Close behind him, a woman in a sharp business suit clutched her phone, speaking rapidly into it. The supervisor took in the scene. The enraged crowd, the handcuffed police captain, the increasingly agitated Officer Corrigan, and his face went stark white. Internal Affairs is on their way, the woman in the suit announced, identifying herself as Isabella Cortez, the mall's Director of Public Relations. Officer, perhaps we should move this situation inside. There is nothing to move inside, Diana stated firmly. These handcuffs need to be removed right now. More phones appeared in the crowd. Live streams multiplied. Comments and shares exploded across social media platforms. The story was spreading with a velocity no one could control. Look at these numbers, someone called out. 20,000 views already. Isabella Cortez stepped closer, her professional smile stretched thin. Officer Corrigan, given the circumstances, perhaps we should— I don't take orders from mall management, Corrigan snapped, but his bravado was cracking, revealing the fear beneath. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool afternoon air. A police cruiser pulled into the parking lot, its lights flashing silently. Sergeant Elias Croft stepped out, his weathered face a carefully neutral mask as he assessed the chaotic situation. He had worked with Diana for years. He knew her unwavering reputation for integrity. Officer Corrigan, Croft called out, his tone deceptively casual. Do you want to explain to me why you have a police captain in cuffs? Corrigan's grip on Diana's arm finally went slack. "Sergeant, I was responding to a report of theft. This woman claimed to be a captain, but that is Captain Rostova," Croft interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise. "Your commanding officer's commanding officer. The badge you are holding is real. I suggest you verify that fact very, very quickly." The crowd had fallen silent, watching the drama unfold with rapt attention. Corrigan's face cycled through a series of emotions: anger, fear, frantic calculation. Finally, with hands that shook, he produced his keys and removed the handcuffs. Diana rubbed her wrists, noting the angry red marks where the metal had dug into her skin. They would be bruises tomorrow, more evidence of yet another routine encounter spiraling into abuse. Isabella Cortez stepped forward, speaking loudly enough for the sea of phones to capture every syllable. "Captain Rostova, on behalf of the Solaris Galleria, I want to extend our most sincere apologies for this unfortunate incident. We pride ourselves on being a welcoming space for all our shoppers, and clearly, we failed you today." "Unfortunate incident?" Diana repeated, her voice sharp as glass. "Is that what we're calling racial profiling and police brutality now?" The PR director flinched. More phones recorded her visible discomfort. "We will be conducting a full and thorough investigation," Cortez continued, her professional veneer cracking. "Our security protocols will be completely reviewed." "Save it," Diana cut her off. "Your security cameras recorded everything. I suggest you preserve that footage." The crowd murmured its approval. Several people called out their support, offering to send their own videos as evidence. While the mall's PR team scrambled to manage the escalating crisis, Sergeant Croft moved closer to Diana, speaking in a low voice. "You should know Corrigan was on his radio before I even arrived." "Let me guess," Diana replied quietly. "Writing his version of the events." Croft nodded grimly. "He's already claiming you resisted arrest and struck him. You know how these reports work. The first version on paper becomes the official narrative." Diana felt a fresh wave of rage, but she kept her expression a neutral mask. She had seen this pattern play out countless times before. False reports meticulously crafted to justify excessive force, especially against black citizens who dared to assert their rights. "He has no idea who he's dealing with," she told Croft. The crowd finally began to disperse as mall management worked desperately to restore some semblance of normalcy. Diana collected her belongings, including her badge, which Corrigan had dropped on the pavement, before quickly leaving the scene. The drive home felt surreal. The familiar streets of her neighborhood looked the same, but for her, everything had shifted. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel, but her mind was a whirlwind, racing through the implications of what had just transpired. Walking into her house, Diana headed straight for her home office. She needed to document everything, every single detail, while it was still raw in her memory. The laptop powered on with a soft, familiar hum. A notification pinged from her email. A new message from the department. The subject line read, "Incident Report 2T1203487." Diana opened the attachment, her jaw tightening as she read. According to Corrigan's meticulously crafted report, she had been combative and aggressive from the very start. He claimed she had physically struck out at officers and resisted legitimate security protocols. The report painted a vivid, damning picture of an angry, out-of-control black woman, the exact poisonous stereotype she had fought to dismantle her entire career. She leaned back in her chair, the accusations burning on the screen. The email had been copied to Internal Affairs, the chief's office, and the police union. Corrigan had moved with lightning speed, seeking to seize control of the narrative. The kitchen clock showed 7:30 p.m. when Sasha Volkov arrived, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the expression of deep concern that Diana had come to know so well over their 15 years of friendship. As a top defense attorney, Sasha had seen enough of these cases to recognize the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "I ordered takeout," Diana said, gesturing to the containers on the dining room table. "Figured we would need fuel for this conversation." Sasha set down her bag and pulled out a manila folder. "I reviewed the report you sent. It's worse than I imagined, Diana." They settled at the table, the familiar comfort of their dinner routine now overshadowed by the day's toxic events. Diana served the food while Sasha poured the wine, both women falling into a practiced rhythm that spoke of years of friendship and shared battles. "Give it to me straight," Diana said, pushing a piece of sweet and sour chicken around her plate. "How bad is this?" Sasha took a slow, deliberate sip of wine before she answered. "The report is perfectly engineered to trigger an internal affairs investigation. Corrigan knows exactly what he's doing. He's alleging you struck him during the arrest. That's assault on an officer. He has painted you as hostile, aggressive, and uncooperative. And he's got those mall security guards corroborating his story." "But there are videos," Diana protested. "Dozens of witnesses saw what actually happened." "Videos can help, but you know how the department operates. They will argue the footage is incomplete, that it doesn't show the full context. They will zero in on your attitude. They will claim you escalated the situation." Sasha's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down. "And let's be honest, we both know how the system treats black officers who dare to make waves." Diana pushed her plate away, her appetite completely gone. "So what are my options? Legally, we can fight this. The videos are a huge asset, and your record is spotless." But Sasha hesitated, choosing her words with care. "If the department decides to push this narrative, you could be facing a suspension pending the investigation. They might even try to leverage this to force you into an early retirement, all over a false shoplifting accusation." Diana's voice rose with incredulity. "Over a bracelet?" "No," Sasha replied softly. "Over challenging the status quo. Over making them look bad. Over being a black woman who refused to just quietly accept the humiliation." The stark truth of those words hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Diana stood up, walking to the kitchen window. Outside, her quiet suburban street looked peaceful, achingly normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. "I could go public," Diana said, turning back to face her friend. "The story is already out there. I could give interviews, tell my side of it." Sasha's expression grew even more concerned. "That's a high-risk move. Remember Captain Maddox from the 12th Precinct? He spoke out about racial profiling in his department 3 years ago. The last I heard, he's working security at a warehouse in Ohio. The system has its ways of making examples out of people who speak up. So I'm just supposed to take it?" Diana's hands clenched into tight fists. "Let them write their lies, destroy my reputation, everything I've worked for?" "No," Sasha said firmly. "We fight smart. We gather our evidence. We build an unassailable case." She paused again, then added, "And Diana, I don't think this is just about you." "What do you mean?" Sasha opened the manila folder she had brought, spreading several documents across the table. "In the past year alone, I have defended 6 clients, all black, all arrested at or near that mall. All of them were charged with resisting arrest or assaulting an officer. And all of them were charged after they had filed complaints about harassment." Diana leaned over the papers, her police training kicking in as she scanned the details. "The same officers are involved. Corrigan's name appears on most of them." "And look at the pattern," Sasha said. "The charges are always filed after the complaints. It's as if they're using the threat of prosecution to silence people." A cold chill traced a path down Diana's spine. The implications were staggering. "How many cases are we talking about? These are just the ones that came to me. How many people do you think accepted plea deals because they couldn't afford to fight? How many stayed silent because they were terrified?" The conversation stretched late into the night, both women dissecting details, searching for patterns, constructing a much larger, more sinister picture. By the time Sasha left, the kitchen clock showed nearly midnight. But sleep was a distant country Diana could not reach. She sat in her darkened living room, the laptop casting a cool blue glow on her face as she scrolled through social media. The videos of her arrest had exploded, a digital wildfire. Some comments were filled with outrage, demanding justice. Others were a cesspool of racist venom, claiming she had played the race card or gotten what she deserved. A news site had picked up the story. Black police captain arrested while shopping. Racial profiling or legitimate stop. The comments section was a brutal battlefield of competing narratives. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. An unknown number. The message made her sit up straighter. "Back off, Captain. You don't know what you're stepping into." Diana stared at the screen, her police training automatically noting the details. Local area code. The text was sent through a standard carrier, not a messaging app. The threat was clear but carefully worded. Nothing explicitly criminal. She took a screenshot, documenting the time and date. One more piece of evidence for the storm that was coming. The phone's glow illuminated her face in the dark room, highlighting the new hard line of determination in her expression. They thought they could frighten her into silence. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Sunlight streamed through the expansive windows of Sasha's office as Diana arrived at 8 p.m. sharp. The law firm was still quiet, most of the staff not due to arrive for another hour, which was precisely why they had arranged to meet so early. "I was up all night reviewing cases," Sasha said, her desk a chaotic landscape of stacked manila folders. The dark circles under her eyes mirrored Diana's own sleepless state. "What I found? It's even bigger than we thought." Diana sank into the chair across from her friend, clutching a travel mug of desperately needed coffee. "Show me." Sasha spread out dozens of case files, creating a grid of paper that covered her large desk. Each one of these represents a false arrest report from the past year. All black residents. Most of them took place at or near the Solaris Galleria. "How many?" 47 cases that I can confirm. But remember, these are just the ones where people fought back or sought legal help. For every one person who challenges the charges, there are probably 5 who simply can't afford to. Diana leaned forward, her eyes scanning the documents, her trained mind instantly recognizing the patterns. The same officers appear repeatedly. Corrigan, Rocco, Flynn, and look at the charges. Sasha tapped several of the files. Resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, disorderly conduct. All charges that pit the citizens' word against the officers, making them nearly impossible to fight effectively in court, Diana added, her jaw tightening. Exactly. And here is where it gets truly disturbing. Sasha pulled out a spreadsheet she had compiled. Of these cases, 86% end in guilty pleas. Most defendants accept plea deals rather than risk going to trial. That's far above the normal plea rate, Diana noted, her investigator's instincts flaring. And every single one of those plea deals includes mandatory probation. Sasha's voice took on a sharp edge. Specifically, probation monitored by a private contractor called Nexus Probation Services. Diana's eyebrows shot up. Private probation? I wasn't even aware that was legal. It's a growing trend. Counties are outsourcing probation monitoring to cut costs. But look at the fees these people are being charged. Sasha handed over another document. Monthly supervision fees, drug testing fees, electronic monitoring fees. Some people end up paying thousands of dollars over their probation period. Creating a whole new system of debtors' prisons, Diana muttered, a cold anger building in her chest. And if they can't pay, they violate their probation. It's back to jail, more fees. It's a never-ending cycle. Diana stood up, too agitated to remain seated. I need to see our internal files on this. There has to be a paper trail at the precinct. Be careful, Sasha warned. After that threat you received last night. I am still a police captain. I have every right to review arrest records. Diana gathered her things. They can't stop me from doing my job. An hour later, Diana sat at her desk in the precinct, methodically pulling up digital records. She was acutely aware of the sideways glances from other officers, the whispered conversations that abruptly ceased when she walked by. The false arrest report had clearly made the rounds. She ignored them, her focus narrowed to her computer screen. Years' worth of arrest data scrolled past as she ran her search queries. Location: Solaris Galleria. Officer Corrigan. Charge: resisting arrest. The numbers kept climbing. Then she found something that made her freeze. It was a memo detailing the department's partnership with Nexus Probation Services. The company's CEO was listed as Silas Blackwood, the same family that owned the mall. Digging deeper, she uncovered financial reports. The probation company was a subsidiary of Blackwood Consolidated. The mall's security firm was another subsidiary. It was all intricately connected. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Sasha. Found something else. These cases spike every quarter, right before the mall reports its earnings to shareholders. Diana's mind raced, connecting the dots. More arrests meant more people on probation. More people on probation meant more fees collected. The mall's security systematically targeted black shoppers. Local police made arrests on trumped-up charges, and the Blackwood family profited from the resulting probation payments. She printed out the key documents, tucking them securely into her briefcase. On her way out, she caught more whispers, more stares. Let them talk. She had much bigger concerns now. The afternoon sun was harsh, as Diana parked her car across the street from the Solaris Galleria. The building's glass facade gleamed, projecting an image of upscale retail prosperity. Yesterday she had seen it as the scene of her humiliation. Now she saw it differently. She watched shoppers coming and going. She saw the mall security guards stationed at every entrance, their hands resting on their radios. She saw a young black mother hurrying past, clutching her purse tightly, her eyes darting nervously. She saw a teenage boy being tailed by a guard, just as she had been. The sheer scale of it hit her all at once. How long had this been going on? How many lives had been derailed by these false charges? How many families had been bled dry by probation fees? All to pad the Blackwood family's profits. Diana gripped her steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. In her 20 years of law enforcement, she had seen plenty of corruption, plenty of systemic racism. But this was different. This was calculated, organized exploitation on an industrial scale. She stared at the mall's towering entrance, the very spot where just yesterday she had been dragged out in handcuffs. Her voice was barely a whisper in the quiet car. This was never just about me. Diana had just settled at her desk with the stack of damning documents when a knock interrupted her thoughts. A young Latina woman stood in her office doorway, a notebook in her hand. "Captain Rostova? I'm Nina Chen from the Metro Telegraph." She stepped forward with a sense of purpose, her press badge swinging from a lanyard around her neck. "Do you have a minute?" Diana was about to give her standard no-comment response, but something in Nina's determined expression made her hesitate. "Close the door." Nina sat down, already pulling out her phone to record. "I've been following your case since the incident at the mall, but that's not why I'm here. I've spent the last 6 months investigating Officer Corrigan and his connections to private probation companies." Diana leaned back, studying the journalist intently. "What have you found?" "Money trails, shell companies, suspicious timing of arrests." Nina pulled up documents on her tablet. "But I keep hitting walls. Sources suddenly go quiet. Records disappear. Then I saw the video of what happened to you, and I knew this was my chance." "Your chance for what?" "To finally expose this entire rotten system." Nina's eyes blazed with conviction. "I have banking records showing massive transfers from Nexus to offshore accounts, tax documents that don't add up, but I need someone on the inside to help me connect the dots." Diana considered her options carefully. Journalists could be allies or enemies, but something about Nina's intensity reminded her of a younger version of herself, 20 years ago. "What's your angle on this story?" "The truth. How a racist cop and a corporate machine are destroying black lives for profit." Nina leaned forward, her voice dropping. "I grew up watching my immigrant parents get harassed by police, targeted by predatory companies. This isn't just a story for me." After a long, silent moment, Diana nodded. "I can't be your official source, but I might know some people who can help you follow the money." "That's all I need." Nina smiled. "And I might have something for you, too. Ever heard of the Justice Coalition?" 2 hours later, they sat in a cramped community center meeting room. Reverend Alistair Finch, a tall, imposing man with graying temples, spread a series of photos across the table. "These are just from the past 3 months. All false arrests by Corrigan and his crew." Around them sat other community leaders, teachers, small business owners, activists. Each of them had stories about Corrigan. Each had been painstakingly gathering evidence. "We've been documenting everything," said Dr. Eris Keene, a local teacher. "Videos, witness statements, medical records from people Corrigan has roughed up. But every single complaint gets buried. The police review board is useless, added Leo Maxwell, who owned a barber shop near the mall. They are all in Blackwood's pocket. Nina took rapid notes while Diana examined the evidence. Dozens of sworn affidavits described the exact same pattern. False accusations, violent arrests, immense pressure to accept plea deals. This woman, Reverend Finch said, pointing to a photo, is a single mother of 3. Corrigan claimed she assaulted him during a routine traffic stop. Now she's paying $300 a month in probation fees. She had to take a second job. They threatened to take her kids if she fought the charges, Dr. Keene added quietly. Diana's hands clenched. Why haven't these stories come out before now? Fear, Leo said simply. Corrigan makes examples of people who speak up. Strange traffic stops in the middle of the night. Sudden building code violations at your business. Your kid's getting hassled at school. But we kept the records, Reverend Finch said, waiting for someone with the power to do something about it. He looked meaningfully at Diana. Maya spoke up. With these affidavits and my financial documents, we could build a solid case. The Telegraph would publish it. It would take more than one article, Diana cautioned. The Blackwood family has armies of lawyers. Then we'll write a series, Nina said firmly. We will follow every thread. We will show everyone just how deep this corruption goes. They spent another hour planning, connecting the disparate pieces of the puzzle. The activists had years of documentation on the ground. Nina had the financial expertise. Diana had the insider's knowledge of police procedures. We need to move carefully, Diana warned as they wrapped up. These people will not go down without a fight. That's why we need to strike hard and fast, Nina argued. Once the first story breaks, other victims will come forward. Darkness had fallen by the time Diana pulled into her driveway. The day's revelations weighed heavily on her. So many lives affected, so much evidence deliberately ignored. She had known that racism existed within the department, but this level of organized, calculated exploitation shocked even her. Her porch light flickered as she approached her front door. The mailbox was stuffed full, overflowing with envelopes that had spilled onto the ground. That was strange. The mail had already been delivered that morning. As she gathered the scattered envelopes, her stomach tightened. There were no return addresses, no postmarks. They had been hand-delivered. Inside, she spread them out on her kitchen table. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the first one. It was a crude, vicious drawing of a hanging figure. Below it, words cut from magazines spelled out a simple message. Mind your business. The next envelope contained photographs, surveillance shots of her leaving her house, shopping, meeting with Sasha. Someone had been following her. More letters spilled out. Vile racial slurs scrawled in jagged handwriting. Threats against her family. A picture of her niece's school. The last envelope held a single photo. A still from the video of her being arrested at the mall. Someone had drawn crosshairs over her face. She sat down heavily in her kitchen chair, the hate mail surrounding her like toxic confetti. They were trying to frighten her into silence, just as they had frightened so many others. But they had made a grave mistake. Captain Diana Sinclair did not scare easily, and now she had proof that they were worried enough to threaten her. She gathered the letters carefully, preserving any potential evidence. Tomorrow she would show them to Nina and the coalition. Let them document one more example of intimidation. The threats only meant that she was on the right track. And she wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, Diana walked through the precinct hallway, the hate mail feeling like a physical weight in her briefcase. She needed someone higher up, someone on her side. Lieutenant Damian Cross's office door was open, and she could see him reviewing reports at his desk. "Got a minute, Damian?" she asked, knocking lightly on the door frame. Cross looked up with his characteristic easy smile. "For you? Always, Captain." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Close the door." Diana settled into the chair, studying her old friend's face. She had known Damian Cross for 15 years, worked countless cases by his side. He had backed her promotion to captain, stood up for her when others questioned her leadership. "I need to show you something," she said, pulling out the threatening letters. "This was in my mailbox last night." Cross's expression darkened as he examined the hate mail. His jaw tightened when he saw the photo with the crosshairs. "Jesus, Diana, have you reported this?" "To who?" She leaned forward. "Damien, this goes deeper than just Corrigan and that mall incident. I've been digging, and there's a pattern. False arrests, coerced pleas, all feeding into this private probation racket." "That's a serious accusation." Cross set the letters down carefully. "You have proof?" "I'm building it. I have victim statements, financial records showing suspicious payments, and now these threats." She tapped the letters. "Someone is scared enough to try to intimidate me." Cross rubbed his temples. "Look, you know I've always had your back, but this kind of investigation, it could shake the entire department." "It needs shaking." Diana's voice hardened. "You've seen how Corrigan operates, how many complaints we've buried. This isn't just about a few dirty cops. It's systematic exploitation." "I hear you." Cross stood, pacing behind his desk. "You're right. This needs to be investigated. But we need to be smart about it." He turned to face her. "Let me help. I can quietly put out some feelers, see who else might be willing to step forward." A wave of relief washed over Diana. "Thanks, Damien. I knew I could count on you." "Always." He smiled warmly. "Just watch yourself, okay? Maybe stay with family for a few days until we figure out who sent these threats." "I'm not hiding," Diana said firmly. "That's exactly what they want." "Stubborn as ever." Cross shook his head fondly. "At least let me assign a patrol car to drive by your house regularly." "I can handle myself." Diana gathered the letters. "But thank you. It helps knowing you're in my corner." "We look out for our own," Cross assured her. "Keep me updated on what you find." The rest of Diana's day passed in a blur of routine duties and careful evidence gathering. She made copies of key documents, storing them in secure locations. Too many records had a way of disappearing in cases like this. It was after midnight when she finally headed home. The street was quiet, crickets chirping in the warm summer air. She pulled into her driveway, automatic lights illuminating her usual parking spot. The harsh glare revealed angry red letters sprayed across her car's hood and doors. "Traitor." Diana froze, her keys in her hand. The paint was still wet, dripping down the white finish of her sedan. Her mind raced. The timing, the message. This was not random vandalism. She did a quick scan of her surroundings, her hand instinctively moving to her holster. Nothing moved in the shadows. Whoever had done this was long gone. With trembling fingers, she took photos of the damage. Then she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The vandals had keyed a message into the paint. "Keep your mouth shut, Captain." Only someone from the department would know her rank. Only someone on the inside would know she was investigating. She thought of everyone she had talked to about the case. Nina, the coalition members, Sasha, Cross. Her conversation with Cross replayed in her mind. He had offered to put out some feelers, asked who else knew about her investigation. "Damn it," she whispered. She had handed him everything, the evidence she'd found, the names of potential witnesses. He was working with Corrigan. Inside her house, Diana dropped heavily into a kitchen chair. Her badge sat on the table where she'd left it that morning. The gold shield caught the light, throwing long shadows across the wall. 20 years. She had worn that badge for 20 years, believed in what it stood for, defended the department against accusations of systemic racism, convinced herself that change could come from within. Now she stared at the symbol of everything she had dedicated her life to, and wondered if the rot went all the way through, if there was anything left worth saving. The shield blurred as tears of rage and betrayal threatened to fall. She blinked them back. There was no time for self-pity. She had decisions to make. Trust no one in the department. Document everything. Build the case quietly until she had ironclad proof. The vandals had made one thing crystal clear. She was on her own inside these walls. Her badge gleamed accusingly in the dim kitchen light. The weight of 20 years pressed down on her shoulders as she faced the possibility that the institution she had believed in had become the very thing she had sworn to fight against. The next morning, Diana's phone buzzed with an urgent text from Nina. "Need to meet. Big break." The usual spot. 20 minutes later, Diana sat in the back booth of a small diner, nursing a coffee that had gone cold. The restaurant was nearly empty, just a few regulars scattered at the counter. The bell above the door chimed as Nina rushed in, her messenger bag clutched tightly against her side. "Sorry I'm late," Nina said, sliding into the booth. Her eyes darted around the diner before she leaned forward. "But you're going to want to see this." Nina pulled out a manila envelope, careful to keep it below table level. "Remember that source I mentioned? The one inside mall management?" She slid the envelope across to Diana. "They came through. Big time." Diana opened the envelope carefully, pulling out several sheets of corporate letterhead. Her eyes widened as she scanned the first page. "These are internal memos from the mall's board meetings," Nina finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dating back 18 months. Look at page 3. Diana flipped to the indicated page. The memo detailed loss prevention initiatives, a corporate euphemism for security protocols. But as she read further, her hands began to shake. The document laid out explicit instructions for security to target high-risk demographics, a thin veil for racial profiling. It included quotes from meetings where board members discussed coordinating with local police to maximize enforcement opportunities. They were working with Corrigan directly, Nina explained, tapping a highlighted section. The board approved bonuses for security staff based on arrest numbers. They knew exactly what they were doing. Diana read further. The memo detailed how arrests would feed into the private probation system run by Nexus Probation Services. The mall's parent corporation, Blackwood Consolidated, owned a controlling stake. "It's all here," Diana breathed. "The entire pipeline." They weren't just allowing racial profiling. They were incentivizing it, turning it into a source of profit. Nina nodded grimly. Every false arrest meant another person forced into their probation program. Monthly fees, mandatory rehabilitation classes, all funneling money right back to the same corporate interests. "How did you get this?" Diana asked, carefully returning the papers to the envelope. "My source works in corporate accounting. They've been documenting everything, waiting for someone to investigate." Nina's eyes gleamed. "When they saw the videos of your arrest go viral, they knew it was time." Diana sat back, her mind racing. This was exactly what they needed. Proof of coordination between police and corporate interests. Evidence of the intentional targeting of black shoppers. No one could dismiss this as a few bad apples or isolated incidents. "We need to protect this," Diana said firmly. "And your source, once this gets out." "Already handled," Nina assured her. "They've documented everything. Backed up files, multiple copies in secure locations." "Smart." Diana tucked the envelope into her jacket. "I'll scan these tonight, create digital backups. But we need to move carefully, especially after what happened to my car." "You think someone in the department is working with them?" "I know they are." Diana's voice was hard. "Lieutenant Damian Cross. I trusted him, told him about the investigation. Next thing I know, my car is vandalized with a warning only someone on the inside would know to leave." "Then we keep this between us," Nina said. "No one else knows about these documents until we're ready to go public." "Agreed." Diana checked her watch. "I need to get these somewhere safe. Then we plan our next move." They parted ways outside the diner, Nina heading to the newspaper office while Diana drove home, the envelope secure in her jacket. Her hand kept touching it during the drive, reassuring herself it was real. At home, Diana went straight to her study. The heavy wooden desk had been her father's, solid oak with a hidden compartment in the bottom drawer. She carefully placed the envelope inside, then locked the drawer with a key she wore around her neck. For the first time in weeks, she felt something like hope. The weight of isolation and betrayal lifted slightly. They had proof now, not just witness statements or circumstantial evidence, but direct documentation of the conspiracy. Diana fixed herself dinner, actually tasting the food for once instead of just going through the motions. She checked her security cameras, a new habit, but the street was quiet. No suspicious vehicles, no more vandals in the night. Later, as she prepared for bed, Diana allowed herself to imagine the aftermath. The press conference where they would reveal everything. The looks on the faces of the mall executives, Corrigan, Cross, all of them realizing their scheme was exposed. the victims finally seeing a measure of justice. She switched off the lights, the house settling into its familiar creaks and hums. The desk drawer was securely locked, the key safe around her neck. For the first time since this ordeal began, sleep came easily. Tomorrow they would begin planning how to release the evidence. But tonight, Diana could rest, knowing they finally had what they needed. The truth would come out. Justice would be served. The memo was their key to bringing down the whole corrupt system. As Diana drifted off, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The end was finally in sight. Diana woke early, energized by the previous day's breakthrough. She poured her morning coffee and texted Nina. "Ready to plan next steps?" No response. An hour later, still nothing. This was unusual for Nina, who typically replied within minutes. Diana tried calling, straight to voicemail. She left a message, trying to keep her tone casual. "Hey, just checking in about our discussion yesterday. Call me when you can." By noon, a knot of anxiety was tightening in her stomach. She had sent 3 more texts and called twice. Nina's silence was deafening. Diana was reviewing case files at her desk when her phone buzzed. A breaking news alert. Her coffee cup crashed to the floor as she read the headline, "Local reporter hospitalized after brutal attack." The article loaded with agonizing slowness. There was Nina's photo. Investigative journalist Nina Chen was found unconscious early this morning. Diana grabbed her keys, her hands shaking. The drive to Metro General felt endless. Every red light was an eternity. Her mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. This was her fault. She had pulled Nina into this dangerous mess. The hospital lobby was swarming with reporters. Diana flashed her badge, pushing through the crowd to the information desk. "Nina Chen's room." "Are you family?" the receptionist asked. "Police captain. She's a witness in an ongoing investigation." The lie came easily. It was necessary. Room 412. The L-Dianator seemed to crawl between floors. Diana's guilt grew with each passing second. She should have known they would target Nina. She should have protected her better. The door to room 412 was open. Nina lay in the hospital bed, her face bruised and swollen, her left arm in a cast. Despite everything, her eyes lit up when she saw Diana. "You look terrible," Nina croaked. "Me?" Diana moved to the bedside. "You're the one in the hospital gown." "Should see the other guy." Nina tried to smile but winced in pain. "What happened?" Diana asked, pulling up a chair. "Walking to my car after work. Someone grabbed me from behind." Nina's voice was rough. It was a professional job. They knew exactly how to inflict pain without killing. Diana's fists clenched. "Did you see their face?" Nina glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "Better. I saw something else. When they threw me to the ground, their jacket rode up. Chrome flashed at their hip." Diana went cold. "A badge?" Nina nodded slightly. "Department issue. Same as yours." The confirmation hit Diana like a physical blow. One of her own had done this. Someone she might pass in the precinct hallways every day. "I'm so sorry," Diana whispered. "I never should have." "Don't." Nina's good hand gripped Diana's wrist with surprising strength. "This just proves we're onto something big." "They're scared." "They should be scared of me now," Diana growled. "Good." Nina shifted, grimacing. "Because I'm not stopping. And neither should you." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Chen needs to rest." 5 more minutes, Nina pleaded. The nurse frowned but nodded. Once they were alone again, Nina spoke urgently. "The memo's safe, right?" "Locked in my desk at home. I'll start making copies today." "Good. Because this," Nina gestured to her injuries, "means we're close. They wouldn't risk attacking a reporter unless they're desperate." Diana stood. "Get some rest. I'll check on you tomorrow." "Be careful," Nina called as Diana reached the door. "They know we have something." The drive home was a blur of rage and worry. Diana's mind kept replaying Nina's words. A department badge. Someone she worked with had done this. The betrayal burned deep. She pulled into her driveway as the sunset painted the sky in fiery shades of orange. Something felt off before she even reached the front door. A subtle wrongness in the air. The door was locked, but that meant nothing. Diana drew her off-duty weapon, entering cautiously. The living room was untouched. The kitchen was normal. But as she approached her study, she saw it. The door was slightly ajar when she always kept it closed. Her heart pounding, Diana pushed the door open. The room was a disaster. Books had been thrown from the shelves, papers scattered everywhere, and her father's desk. The heavy oak drawer had been forced open, the lock splintered. Diana rushed forward, already knowing what she would find. The hidden compartment gaped empty. The manila envelope containing their evidence was gone. Diana sank into her chair, the magnitude of the loss hitting her with crushing force. Their proof, the documentation that could have exposed everything, was all gone. She thought of Nina lying in that hospital bed, battered but unbowed. She thought of all the victims of this scheme who were counting on them, even if they didn't know it yet. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Next time, it won't just be the journalist. Diana stared at the message, her hands trembling with fury. They thought this would stop her, that stealing the evidence and attacking her friend would make her back down. They didn't know her at all. She dialed 911 to report the break-in, but she already knew what the response would be. A routine report, no real investigation, the system protecting its own. As she waited for the patrol officers to arrive, Diana looked around her violated study. The desk her father had given her, now broken. The scattered remnants of her investigation. They had taken the memo, but they couldn't take her determination, or Nina's courage, or the truth of what they had uncovered. The morning after the break-in, Diana sat at her kitchen table staring at the official summons from Internal Affairs. The cream-colored paper felt heavy in her hands, each word a hammer blow. Immediate suspension. Pending investigation. Allegations of misconduct. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News alerts kept popping up, each headline worse than the last. Troubled police, captain claims conspiracy. Sources say suspended officer shows signs of instability. Police captain's vendetta against mall security raises questions. Diana clicked on one article, her jaw clenching as she read. Sources within the department describe Captain Rostova's recent behavior as erratic and vindictive. The decorated officer's apparent obsession with proving discrimination at the Solaris Galleria has colleagues concerned. Lies, she whispered, closing the browser. But the damage was done. They were painting her as the angry black woman, twisting her justified outrage into something dangerous and irrational. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. Hope you die, pig. She had received dozens of messages like it since yesterday. Some were creative in their hatred, others simple death threats. Diana got up and drew the blinds tighter, though it was barely noon. The darkness felt safer somehow. She had already swept the apartment twice for bugs, checked all the windows and doors. Paranoid maybe, but after what happened to Nina, after the break-in, the TV droned in the background. Some local news anchor discussing her situation with false concern. Sources say Captain Rostova's claims of systematic discrimination appear to be unfounded, possibly stemming from personal grievances. Diana grabbed the remote, clicking it off with trembling hands. The silence felt better than their lies. Her badge and gun sat on the coffee table, surrendered that morning to Internal Affairs. 20 years of service reduced to a piece of metal and a weapon she could no longer carry. The sight of them made her stomach turn. Her phone rang. Her sister this time. Diana let it go to voicemail. What could she say? That she was fine? That everything would work out? The lies would stick in her throat. She paced the apartment, feeling caged. The walls seemed to close in with each pass. Every shadow held potential threats. Every unexpected sound made her jump. A news helicopter buzzed overhead. They had been circling her building all morning, hoping to catch a glimpse of the troubled captain. Diana ducked away from the windows, though the blinds were already drawn tight. Her laptop chimed with new email notifications. From the police union. In light of recent events. From her supervisor. Disappointed doesn't begin to cover it. From an anonymous account. Should have kept your mouth shut. She slammed the laptop closed. The screen had started to blur anyway. Her eyes burning with frustrated tears she refused to let fall. The doorbell rang, making her jump. Diana approached cautiously, checking the peephole. Her heart skipped a beat. Leah stood in the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder. Diana opened the door quickly, pulling her niece inside. Leah, what are you doing here? You should be in school. Half day, Leah said, dropping her backpack. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around her aunt in a fierce hug. And I needed to see you. Diana stiffened at first, then melted into the embrace. She hadn't realized how much she needed this simple human contact from someone who didn't see her as a threat or a failure. Mom's worried, Leah said, still holding on tight. She's been trying to call you. I know. Diana pulled back, studying her niece's face. I can't talk to anyone right now. Not with everything. You mean all the lies they're telling? Leah's young face hardened with an anger that mirrored Diana's own. We know they're lies, Auntie E. Everyone at school knows it too. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Look at this. The video loaded, the footage from the mall. Diana tried to look away, not wanting to relive that humiliation, but Leah insisted. No, look at the views. The number took a moment to register. 5.2 million views. The comments section was flooded. This is what systemic racism looks like. Captain Rostova is a hero for standing up. We stand with you, Captain. And it's not just the video, Leah said excitedly. People are sharing their own stories about Officer Corrigan, about the mall security, about the whole corrupt system. You started something, Auntie E. Diana sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. They're still saying I'm unstable, that I'm making it all up. So what? Leah sat beside her, a fierce determination in her young face. The truth is out there now. People are watching. They're listening. And they're angry. Not at you, at them. Leah pulled up another page. A social media group with thousands of members, all sharing similar experiences at the Solaris Galleria. Stories of harassment, false arrests, coerced pleas. See? Leah squeezed her aunt's hand. You're not alone. And you're not crazy. You're the only one who was brave enough to stand up to them. For the first time in days, Diana felt something other than despair. A small spark of hope, kindled by her niece's unwavering faith, and the evidence that public opinion was shifting. When did you get so wise? She asked, managing a small smile. I learned from the best, Leah hugged her again. You always taught me to stand up for what's right, no matter what. That's what you're doing now. And we're all standing with you. The afternoon sun beat down on the growing crowd outside the Solaris Galleria. Diana stood among the protesters, a baseball cap pulled low over her eyes, watching in amazement as hundreds of voices rose together. Justice for Rostova! Justice for Rostova! Signs bobbed above the sea of people. Stop racial profiling. End police corruption. We stand with Captain Rostova. Diana's throat tightened. Just days ago she had felt completely, utterly alone. Now strangers were demanding justice in her name. The crowd stretched along the mall's entire front entrance, forcing shoppers to weave through protest lines just to enter. Mall security huddled nervously behind the glass doors, radioing back and forth. A few uniformed officers stood at a distance, looking deeply uncomfortable. None of them recognized her in the crowd. This is what solidarity looks like, said an elderly woman next to Diana, her gray hair crowned with a Black Lives Matter cap. They thought they could silence you, Captain. But we're your voice now. Diana nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The woman squeezed her arm and moved on, never realizing she had just encouraged the very person they were all there to support. A group of teenagers near the front started a new chant. Show the truth! Show the truth! The rhythm spread through the crowd like wildfire. Diana felt it in her chest, each beat matching her heart. The energy was electric, crackling with righteous anger and hope. Captain Rostova? Diana turned at the quiet voice behind her. A black teenage girl stood there, phone clutched to her chest, her eyes wide with recognition. I'm Zara, the girl said quickly. Zara Ali. I recorded the video. Of what they did to you. Diana's eyes widened. She had seen the viral footage dozens of times, but had never known who captured it. Thank you, she said softly. Your video showed people the truth. Zara glanced around nervously. Not the whole truth, not yet. I have more footage, from before they grabbed you. She pulled Diana aside, away from the main crowd, and held up her phone. I started recording as soon as I saw Officer Corrigan enter the mall. Something felt wrong about how fast he showed up. The video played. Diana watched as Corrigan strode through the mall, moving with clear purpose toward the boutique. But this footage started nearly 5 minutes before the confrontation, before any accusations were made. "Look," Zara pointed. In the frame, Corrigan stopped at the boutique's entrance. He leaned in close to the manager, Eleanor, whispering something. Eleanor nodded, her expression hardening. Then Corrigan stepped back out of sight and waited. Less than a minute later on the footage, Diana entered the store. "He set it up," Diana breathed. "He orchestrated the whole thing before I even walked in." Zara nodded vigorously. "I caught him doing the same thing last month with my cousin, but nobody would believe us then. When I saw him heading toward that store, I knew something was about to go down. I just didn't know it would be you he was targeting." "Why didn't you release this part before?" "I was scared," Zara admitted. "Corrigan has friends everywhere. But seeing all these people here today," she gestured at the crowd, "I can't stay quiet anymore. This proves he planned it. He profiled you before you even entered the store." Diana's mind raced. The unedited footage was damning. It showed clear premeditation, destroying any claim that the confrontation arose naturally from suspicious behavior. "I'm not the only one with videos either," Zara continued. "I run a YouTube channel about police accountability. People have been sending me clips for months. Corrigan doing the same thing over and over. Always at this mall, always targeting black shoppers." The crowd's chants grew louder. "No justice, no peace." Zara touched Diana's arm. "My followers want to help. We can spread this everywhere. But it needs a voice. Your voice. People trust you. You're proof that even black officers aren't safe from this corruption." Diana stared at the protest, her mind whirling with possibilities. The unedited video, the witness statements Nina had gathered, the financial records linking the mall to the probation scheme, and now an army of young activists ready to amplify the truth. "They can't silence all of us," Zara said firmly. "Not if we stand together." A news van pulled up to the curb, a reporter and cameraman jumping out. The crowd surged forward, eager to be heard. Diana watched the reporters set up, her heart pounding. She had evidence now. Real, undeniable evidence. But more importantly, she had witnesses, allies, a movement building behind her. The protesters' voices swelled. "What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now." Mall security was calling for backup. More police cars arrived, officers forming a line between the protesters and the entrance. Zara held up her phone, the damning video ready to share. "What do you want to do, Captain?" Diana straightened her shoulders, drawing strength from the energy of the crowd. The truth was right there in Zara's hand. All she needed now was the right moment to reveal it. A moment so big that they couldn't possibly bury the story again. The fluorescent lights of Metro General's recovery ward cast harsh shadows across Nina's bruised face. She lay propped up in the hospital bed, her left arm in a cast, but her eyes blazed with the same fierce determination Diana remembered. "You should be resting," Diana said, settling into the chair beside the bed. The energy of the protest outside the Solaris Galleria still echoed in her mind. Nina adjusted herself with a wince. "Can't rest. Not when I've got something this big." She glanced at the door before lowering her voice. "Remember how I told you my attacker had a badge?" Diana nodded, leaning closer. "Well, he was sloppy." A hint of satisfaction crossed Nina's face. "During the attack, my phone fell. He grabbed it, probably thinking I'd recorded him, but he didn't know about my backup security measures." "What do you mean?" Nina's good hand reached for her laptop on the bedside table. "I'm a journalist in this day and age. You think I don't have tracking software?" The moment he turned my phone on, it started uploading everything to my cloud storage, including... She opened a folder. "All the files from his phone." Diana's eyes widened. "You hacked a police officer's phone?" "Technically, he hacked himself by connecting to my device. And guess whose phone it was?" Nina turned the screen toward Diana. "Officer Rocco, Corrigan's partner." Diana scanned the documents filling the screen. Spreadsheets, bank statements, email chains. Her hands began to shake as she read. "It's all here," Nina said. "Every payment from the mall's parent company to Nexus Probation Services. every kickback to city officials who approved the contracts. Look at the dates. They line up perfectly with the spike in arrests. Diana scrolled through emails between Corrigan and Marcus Blackwood, the mall's CEO. They discussed quotas and target demographics with casual cruelty. Another thread showed conversations with Judge Diane Morley, who presided over most of the mall-related cases, discussing how to expedite guilty pleas. "They're not even trying to hide it," Diana muttered. "They thought nobody would ever see these." "There's more." Nina pulled up another document. "Remember that memo that disappeared from your desk? I found a copy in Rocco's email. He was the one who broke in, probably on Corrigan's orders." The pieces clicked together in Diana's mind. "That's why they attacked you. They knew you were close to exposing everything. And now we have proof that goes way beyond just racial profiling at the mall. This is systematic exploitation for profit." Nina's voice strengthened. "But we need the right platform to release it. Somewhere they can't shut us down or spin the story." Diana pulled out her phone, checking the city calendar. "The council meeting this Thursday night. It's a public forum. Anyone can speak." "Perfect." Nina sat up straighter, ignoring the pain. "The press always covers council meetings. Plus, half the people implicated in these documents will be sitting right there on the council. They'll try to shut me down the moment I start speaking." "Not if we time it right." Nina's reporter instincts kicked in. "We released the unedited arrest video an hour before the meeting. While everyone is reacting to that, you take the podium. Once you start presenting the financial evidence, they won't dare stop you. Not with every news camera in the city rolling." Diana imagined the scene. Facing down Corrigan, the council members, the mall executives, all the people who thought they could break her. "We'll need to organize everything perfectly. These documents, the video footage, witness statements." "I've already started compiling it," Nina said, pulling up a presentation. "We just need to fine-tune your statement. Hit them with the personal story first. What happened to you? Then broaden it to show the pattern. End with the financial proof that ties it all together." They spent the next hour organizing the evidence, crafting the narrative. Nina's journalistic experience helped structure the revelations for maximum impact. Diana added details from her law enforcement background, highlighting how each piece violated specific policies and laws. "You know they'll come after us hard for this," Diana said finally. "Especially you. They've already shown they're willing to use violence." Nina touched her bruised face. "Let them try. Every attack just proves we're telling the truth." "Besides," she managed to smile, "I've got a police captain watching my back now." Diana squeezed Nina's hand gently. "Get some rest. I'll have uniforms I trust posted outside your door tonight." Later that evening, Diana stood before the mirror in her bathroom, index cards in hand. The speech they had prepared felt heavy with truth and consequence. She studied her reflection. The shadows under her eyes, the new lines of stress around her mouth, the steel in her gaze. "My name is Captain Diana Sinclair," she practiced, her voice steady. "2 weeks ago I was falsely arrested while shopping at the Solaris Galleria. But this isn't just about one incident of racial profiling. This is about a systemic criminal enterprise operating within our city." She paused, remembering the protesters' chants, Zara's courage, Nina's determination despite her injuries. The weight of their trust pressed on her shoulders. "This stops now," she told her reflection. "All of it." She laid out her suit for Thursday, her sharpest blazer, pressed pants, polished shoes. Her captain's badge, which she hadn't worn since the suspension, caught the light on her dresser. She picked it up, feeling its familiar weight. Everything hinged on Thursday night. The evidence was solid. The witnesses were ready. The stage was set. She just had to stand up and speak the truth. Diana returned to the mirror, squaring her shoulders. "My name is Captain Diana Sinclair," she began again, her voice growing stronger with each word. The marble halls of City Hall echoed with footsteps and whispered conversations. Camera crews jostled for position near the council chamber doors. Inside, every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. Diana paused in the doorway, her heart pounding. The evidence folder felt heavy in her hands. She spotted familiar faces. Nina in the back, her arm still in a cast. Zara with her phone ready to record. Community activists wearing Justice for Rostova t-shirts. Nobody noticed her at first. She was dressed in civilian clothes, her badge pinned discreetly inside her blazer. Near the front, Officer Corrigan lounged in his chair, talking and laughing with Marcus Blackwood, the mall's CEO. Their comfortable arrogance made her stomach turn. Mayor Davies sat at the center of the raised council platform, mopping his forehead with a handkerchief. His eyes darted between his phone and the crowd. The other council members shifted in their seats, obviously aware of the tension filling the room. Diana took her place in line behind other citizens waiting to speak. Each person had 3 minutes at the podium. She watched the clock, knowing Zara's video would be dropping any moment. A commotion rippled through the crowd. Phones lit up across the chamber as people nudged each other, showing their screens. Corrigan's laughter cut off mid-chuckle as he noticed. The unedited footage of her arrest was live. "Next speaker, please," Mayor Davies announced, his voice strained. Diana stepped to the podium. Now heads turned. Whispers spread like fire. Corrigan sat up straight, his smirk faltering. "My name is Captain Diana Sinclair." Her voice carried clear and strong through the microphone. "2 weeks ago, I was falsely arrested while shopping at the Solaris Galleria. But this is not just about one incident of racial profiling." She laid out her evidence folder, spreading documents across the podium. "This is about a systematic criminal enterprise operating within our city. An enterprise that targets black citizens for arrest, forces them into plea deals, and profits from their probation." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Camera flashes lit up the room. "I have here internal communications between mall executives and police officers." She held up the first document. "They discuss arrest quotas targeting specific demographics. I have financial records showing payments from the mall's parent company to Nexus Probation Services." Blackwood, the mall's CEO, pulled out his phone, typing frantically. Mayor Davies tried to interrupt. "Captain Rostova, this forum is for community concerns, not unfounded accusations." "These accusations are fully documented," Diana continued, her voice rising, "including emails between Officer Jax Corrigan and Judge Diane Morley discussing how to expedite guilty pleas." She turned to face Corrigan directly. "The same Officer Corrigan who falsely arrested me, then filed a fraudulent report claiming I assaulted him." Corrigan's face had turned a deep shade of red. He half rose from his seat, but Blackwood grabbed his arm, whispering urgently, "When I began investigating this scheme, I was suspended. A journalist helping me was attacked by a police officer. But they made a mistake." Diana held up a thumb drive. "The officer who attacked her accidentally uploaded evidence proving everything I'm saying." The crowd was fully engaged now, recording every word. Some people were already posting live updates. Phones kept buzzing with notifications as the story spread. "This system has destroyed lives," Diana said, her voice ringing with conviction. "Hundreds of innocent citizens pressured into guilty pleas, forced to pay probation fees they can't afford, trapped in a cycle of debt and surveillance, all to profit a private company and its co-conspirators." She looked directly at the council. "You have all seen the video by now. That is how it starts. But I have statements from dozens of victims. I have proof of kickbacks to city officials. I have—" "That's enough!" Corrigan exploded from his seat. He stormed toward the podium, his hand moving to his weapon. "You're under arrest for defamation and interfering with an investigation." The crowd surged to its feet. But before Corrigan could reach her, 2 uniformed officers stepped into his path. Diana recognized them. Officers Kai and Diaz from her precinct. "Stand down, Corrigan," Kai said firmly. "You're not arresting anyone." "Get out of my way." Corrigan tried to push past them. "That's an order." "We don't take orders from you," Diaz replied. More officers emerged from the crowd, forming a protective line between Corrigan and Diana. The chamber erupted. People jumped to their feet, phones recording everything. A chant started in the back. "Justice! Justice!" spreading until it filled the room. Corrigan backed away, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. The mall's CEO had already slipped toward an exit. Mayor Davies was desperately banging his gavel, trying to restore order, but the chant only grew louder. "Justice! Justice!" Justice! Diana stood at the podium, surrounded by her fellow officers, watching as the truth she had fought so hard to expose finally burst into the light. The council chamber descended into chaos. Camera crews pushed forward. Microphones extended like spears. Flashbulbs turned the room into a strobing landscape of light and shadow. The chant of justice bounced off the marble walls, becoming a thunderous roar. Diana remained steady at the podium, her hands no longer shaking. She had carried this weight for weeks. The fear, the anger, the betrayal. Now, watching it all unravel, she felt strangely calm. Attorney General Helena Rossi shouldered her way through the crowd, her face set with grim determination. She had been sitting quietly in the back, listening to everything. Now she meant business. "Captain Rostova!" Rossi called out over the noise. "I need those documents, all of them. Now." Diana carefully gathered her evidence folder, making sure every paper was in place. The financial records Nina had recovered, the internal memos, the victim statements, 2 weeks of her life, compressed into manila and paper. "It's all here," Diana said, handing over the folder. "The money trail goes back 3 years. Payments from shell companies owned by the mall's parent corporation, routed through offshore accounts, landing in Judge Morley's private foundation. Similar payments to Nexus Supervision Services, which is owned by Councilman Grant's brother-in-law." Rossi flipped through the documents, her eyes widening. "This is comprehensive." She pulled out her phone, firing off rapid texts. "I'm calling in my team. Nobody leaves this room." The mayor was still trying to restore order, but his gavel strikes were drowned out by the crowd. Several council members had already slipped away through a side door. Others sat frozen, faces pale, probably wondering if their names were in that folder. Corrigan paced near the wall like a caged animal, the other officers still blocking his path to Diana. His hand kept twitching toward his empty holster. Officer Kai had quietly convinced him to hand over his weapon minutes earlier. "This is all lies," Corrigan shouted, his voice cracking. "She's making it up. She's trying to destroy everything we've built." He caught himself too late. "Everything you've built?" Rossi turned toward him sharply. "And what exactly have you built, Officer Corrigan?" More state investigators arrived, flowing into the chamber like a tide of dark suits and badges. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing exits, collecting phones, taking names. Marcus Blackwood, the mall's CEO, tried to blend into a group heading for the door. A female investigator stepped into his path. "Mr. Blackwood, we'll need you to stay." "I have an urgent meeting," Blackwood began. "Yes," the investigator cut him off. "You do?" "With us." Near the podium, Officer Diaz approached Corrigan, holding handcuffs. The sight seemed to break something in Corrigan. His face twisted with rage. "You can't do this," he snarled. "I'm one of you. 20 years on the force. You're really going to side with her?" "Turn around, Jax," Diaz said quietly. "Don't make this worse." For a moment it seemed Corrigan might fight. His muscles tensed, his eyes darting between the officers surrounding him. Then his shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him all at once. As Diaz cuffed him, reading him his rights, Corrigan kept his eyes locked on Diana. The hatred in his gaze was pure poison. But Diana didn't look away. She had spent too long looking away from ugly truths. Mayor Davies had finally given up on his gavel. He stood straightening his tie, trying to project an authority he no longer possessed. "In light of these allegations," he announced, "I am calling for an immediate, independent investigation into all matters raised here tonight. The city will cooperate fully." "The state is taking over this investigation," Rossi interrupted. "Your cooperation is not optional, Mr. Mayor. It's required by law." The crowd had shifted from chanting to filming everything on their phones. The story was already exploding across social media. Reporters were doing live stand-ups from every corner of the chamber. Diana watched as Corrigan was led away, followed by Blackwood and several visibly nervous council members. State investigators were sealing offices, confiscating computers, marking evidence. The system she had fought against was being dismantled, piece by piece, right in front of her eyes. Officer Kai touched her arm gently. "Captain, there's a crowd gathering outside. They want to hear from you." Diana nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her drained. But she knew she had one more thing to do. She made her way through the chamber, accepting handshakes and pats on the back from strangers. Nina caught her eye from across the room, giving her a thumbs up with her good arm. Zara was already uploading her video footage, grinning triumphantly. The heavy doors of City Hall opened onto a warm night. The steps were packed with protesters, their signs illuminated by streetlights and phone screens. As Diana emerged, a cheer went up that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. "Captain Rostova! Captain Rostova!" She stood at the top of the steps, looking out over the sea of faces, black, white, young, old, all united in demanding change. Some were crying. Others hugged complete strangers. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders to see better. For the first time in weeks, Diana felt the crushing weight begin to lift from her shoulders. She had carried the burden of this fight alone for so long. But she wasn't alone anymore. The truth was out. Justice was coming. The cool night air felt like freedom on her skin. 3 days later, the Solaris Galleria stood like a ghost of its former self. The usual Saturday bustle had been replaced by an eerie quiet, broken only by the echo of footsteps against polished floors. Yellow police tape crossed the entrances of several stores, their windows dark and shuttered. Under investigation. Diana walked through the main corridor, her heels clicking against the tile. She wore her captain's uniform today, not out of obligation, but as a statement. This time there would be no mistaking who she was. The few stores that were open had more employees than customers. Many shops were temporarily closed, their owners caught up in the widening investigation. The food court, usually packed on weekends, was half empty. Signs in windows announced, "Under new management," or "Temporarily closed pending review." A young mother pushing a stroller recognized Diana, her face breaking into a wide smile. "Captain Rostova, thank you. Thank you for everything you did." Diana nodded, touched by the warmth in the woman's voice. More people noticed her and started to gather. An elderly man reached out to shake her hand. "My grandson was one of them," he said quietly. "They got him on a false charge last year, made him take that plea deal. Now his case is being reviewed." He paused. "Thanks to you." "I'm glad," Diana replied, squeezing his hand. "That's exactly why we fought this." A small crowd had formed, following her at a respectful distance. Some clapped softly. Others just wanted to be near her, to express their gratitude with a nod or a smile. The new security guards, hired after the entire previous team was dismissed, stood straight and saluted as she passed. Near the fountain, a group of teenage girls whispered excitedly, pointing at her. One broke away from the group, approaching nervously. "Captain, would you take a picture with us? You're like our hero now. We did a whole presentation about you in our civics class." Diana posed with the girls, their excitement infectious as their phones clicked and flashed. She remembered being their age, how much it would have meant to see someone who looked like her standing up to power and winning. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than who you are," she told them. "Stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." She spotted Leah waiting by the boutique, the very same one where everything had started. Her niece's face lit up as Diana approached. "Auntie E!" Leah rushed forward for a hug. "This is so weird being back here." "Good weird or bad weird?" "Good weird. Definitely good weird." Leah gestured at the store. "They got a whole new staff. The manager who called the cops on you? She's being investigated too. Turns out she was getting kickbacks for targeting black shoppers." Inside Aura Gems, the atmosphere was completely different. The new staff greeted them warmly, almost reverently. The young cashier could barely contain her excitement. "Captain Rostova, it's such an honor. Please, let us know if you need anything at all." Diana and Leah browsed the jewelry section, finally able to shop in peace. The same displays that had led to Diana's arrest now sparkled innocently under the lights. "Still can't believe it took 3 weeks just to buy you a birthday present," Diana said, examining a delicate silver necklace. "Worth the wait, though." Leah touched her aunt's arm. "What you did, it changed things. Like really changed things. Kids at school look at me differently now. They want to know what it's like having a superhero for an aunt." Diana laughed. "I'm no superhero, honey. Just someone who got tired of being pushed around. That's what makes you a hero, though. You were scared, but you did it anyway. They selected a beautiful pendant, silver wings spreading into flight. As they approached the register, other shoppers stepped back, insisting they go first. The cashier carefully wrapped their purchase, then added a second, smaller box. "This is a gift from us," she explained, "to apologize for everything." Diana started to protest, but the girl's earnest expression stopped her. "Thank you. That's very kind." More people had gathered outside the store, forming an impromptu reception line. An older woman pressed cookies into Diana's hands. A man in a business suit stopped to thank her for exposing the corruption. Parents pointed her out to their children, explaining who she was. "See? That's the police captain who stood up to the bad guys." Walking toward the exit, the crowd grew larger. Someone started clapping. The sound spread, filling the mall with applause. Diana felt Leah squeeze her hand. Security held the doors open as they approached. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. The applause followed them into the parking lot. Leah clutched her shopping bag, grinning. "This is like a movie ending or something." Diana smiled, thinking of everything that had happened. The fear, the anger, the betrayal, but also the courage, the solidarity, the victory. She thought of Nina, recovering but already working on her next story. Of Zara, whose video had helped spark a movement. Of all the people whose lives had been touched by this fight. "You know what, kiddo?" Diana squeezed her niece's shoulder, her voice low, meant just for Leah. "This fight isn't over. But today, we won." The setting sun caught the silver wings of Leah's new necklace, making them shimmer like hope taking flight. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.